आज भी आशिकों की पहली जो जुबान होती है वो उर्दू होती है
Exactly.
क्योंकि प्यार और टकरार सबसे अच्छा एक्सप्रेस उर्दू में ही किया जाता है.
Even my own personal experience, I've grown around Bengali speaking, Hindi speaking, Urdu speaking, even sometimes Chinese friends I had when I was growing up, Anglo-Indian friends. So it's always a very mixed community, and I think that's very important generally for an understanding of who we are as people. Right?
I've heard there is a Chinese Kali Badi in Kolkata. Maybe like a friend, a couple of my friends have told me that there is a Chinese Kali Badi, which is in Chinatown maybe.
There is a vibrant Urdu literary culture in Kolkata, in Bengal. Then why are those writers not coming to the forefront? Why are they not being translated? I think that is the question generally of every language, right? That the more you listen to somebody else's point of view, or their voices rather, the more you get a holistic understanding of society.
Right.
Nobody wants to read novels anymore because you used to read novels once upon a time for entertainment, but now you have Netflix and Prime and things like that. You want to get things done quickly. I think that's why where literature also has to evolve to some extent, right?
But non-fiction भी नहीं चल रहा है. But like people are not even reading non-fiction.
Yeah,
चलो,
people are
forget
not
novel,
reading
but
generally,
that is also wrong.
Yeah, so I think it's necessary to get that reading culture back because reading does allow you. It's not just for the sake of entertainment, right? And that is one of the fundamental reasons why we study literature. So I think in the case of for writers at least, once they see something, once they see an experience, once they see an event, for them writing might become an act of translating feeling into words, right?
Well, there are books, there are stories, and this is a beautiful book, Contemporary Urdu Short Stories from Kolkata. Basically, a lot of writers who have written Urdu literature who are from Kolkata. It's a translation into English of all those stories. Translated by Shams Afif Siddiqi, edited by Shams Afif Siddiqi and Fuzail Asar Siddiqi. Fuzail is here with me on Wassup Aabir. Welcome.
Hi Abir, how are you?
Absolutely great, yaar. How are you? कैसे हैं? जिंदगी कैसी चल रही है?
Things are fine. We're just hoping that the book works well.
Okay.
So
we'll be certainly talking about book in detail. What is it? How has been the writing? This and that. But before that, tell us about yourself. Where you come from? How has been the life so far?
Yeah. So currently, I'm teaching at Ashoka University, Department of English.
Okay.
I did my MPhil PhD from JNU in Delhi.
Okay.
I've left Kolkata for some time now. It's been 7, 8, 9 years.
Okay. But you shuttle.
Yeah, I shuttle back and forth. Kolkata is the place to be when you want to relax, get away from the hectic life.
There's a word called lad, which means alas, aram se sukoon.
Yeah.
That is like a vibe of Kolkata. A lot of people say कि यार यहाँ सुकून चाहिए हमें और कुछ नहीं चाहिए.
Yeah.
But is it actually the case? Like
yeah, of course. I think people are just not worried about
every
life in
life.
general. They want to enjoy whatever time they have.
Right. I guess that should be the ideal case. That should be the ideal scenario with every state or every place in India or globally. Because a trend particularly I have seen in Kolkata is after office hours, you'll see everybody indulging into any hobby. Maybe it's playing sport or maybe drawing, painting, singing. कुछ ना कुछ हर इंसान नौकरी बस जरूर करता है. Does that also happen with you or like in general? Have you witnessed that scene?
Here in Kolkata?
Yeah?
Yeah, generally, yeah, because I think people don't want to take just work as seriously, They want to do things, they want to enjoy life, do some reading. As you know, Kolkata has a very vibrant reading culture. So, and there are book fairs in different languages, and Bengali, of course, dominates, but there is, a regular international Urdu book fair that continuously happens every year. So, people are always wanting to be up to date with cultural aspects of their existence. It's not just let's just go to work and just come back. There has to be multiple aspects to our lives, to our personalities, which I feel, especially in a place like Kolkata, gives you that space to do that.
Makes
right,
sense.
to explore yourself, to meet other cultures, meet other people.
Makes sense.
And especially in Kolkata, because it's such a multicultural place. Even though Delhi is also a multicultural place, but Kolkata has these many communities living together.
Yeah, there is Chinese, there is Marwadis,
exactly.
Everybody here. And it's a very beautiful blend of all these communities.
Yeah, and they're all living in very close proximity to each other. It's not as separate as things are generally. So like even my own personal experience, I've grown around Bengali speaking, Hindi speaking, Urdu speaking, even sometimes Chinese friends I had when I was growing up, Anglo-Indian friends. So it's always a very mixed community, and I think that's very important generally for an understanding of who we are as people. Right?
I've heard there is a Chinese Kali Badi in Kolkata. Maybe like a couple of my friends have told me that there is a Chinese Kali Badi, which is in Chinatown maybe. I really want to go and see like how the cultures are bridged in that particular space. I really want to go there.
That's actually very interesting, right?
Very interesting, yeah.
It's not a one-track mind, one-track understanding of culture. The cultural intermixing is happening at every stage.
Yeah.
So I think that's very necessary for a society in itself. Right?
Agreed.
That you talk to the other, whoever the other is. It's a linguistic other, it's a cultural other. It's a religious other,
Very
whatever
well
the
said,
case.
Very well
so I think that keeps.
It's really important to talk to the other.
Exactly. So that keeps a sense of society, a sense of community intact, rather than living separate lives.
Agreed.
In that sense, right?
Makes sense. So how come this book? This is like a fusion of work from a lot of writers.
Yeah.
And these were originally in Urdu.
Yeah.
Then you and your dad decided to like translate it.
Yeah.
He translated it, and you guys, both of you edited it.
Yeah.
How come? What was the idea behind this?
So this is because me and my brother both were at JNU, and my father, Shamsawi Siddiqi, he used to teach in the government colleges in Bengal.
Okay.
He was also professor of English only.
Baap re.
So when he was here in JNU, the story was that my brother at one point of time told him that you have this expertise in English and expertise in Urdu also. So there is writing that is happening in Urdu in Kolkata. It's not just in North India. It's not just Lucknow, Delhi, and or Pakistan, for example, where literature is happening in Urdu. That if there is a vibrant Urdu literary culture in Kolkata, in Bengal, then why are those writers not coming to the forefront? Why are they not being translated? Why are their works not being, discussed in popular culture, in academic culture, and things like that, right? So I think that from his perspective, it definitely, and just generally, as editors also, it felt that it was necessary to visualize these people, their writings, to bring them to the limelight, that there is a vibrant culture that sort of becomes marginalized, that is peripheralized in the larger Urdu literary culture also. That Urdu is not just a North Indian language, that there is a large portion of people in Bengal and other parts of the country that speak Urdu, that write Urdu, right, that read Urdu. So what do they think about what is literature? What do they think is their perspective about literature different? Is their perspective about their world different from, say, the North Indian perspective? And I think that is the question generally of every language, right? That the more you listen to somebody else's, point of view, or their voices rather, the more you get a holistic understanding of society.
Right.
So I think the impetus for the book comes primarily from that, which is to see what these people are writing about, read about them, what is their worldview like, what is their perspective on literature, what is their perspective on Urdu language, whether they feel that they have something to say that has not been said up till now, right? Generally about the human condition.
Makes sense.
Right, where humanity, or your the human conundrum, you can say, is not just about pain, is not just about suffering. There are positive aspects to it, right? So the attempt of the book was primarily to bring all these aspects of loving and losing, of history and violence, everything that is part and parcel of our human existence. I think this book, the stories in the book, try to explore every aspect of that.
How old are these stories?
So these are contemporary stories. So they will be from any point from the 1980s to the present day.
Okay.
Right. So one of the features of the book primarily was that most of the writers are still living and writing in Kolkata.
Oh.
Apart from one who has sadly passed away, everyone else is still,
So if you really love the book, you can actually visit
you can
Kolkata and
meet
meet
the writer
them.
and talk to the writers and see, so the contemporary nature of the book, gives it a unique edge, primarily because the kind of reading that we're doing, most of the writers that, especially in Urdu, as we discussed it's whether it's Manto, it's Chugta, it's Premchand, these are writers that have been,
Exploited to the utmost level.
to have been discussed and exploited almost. It's very nicely put. It's been discussed and exploited and overdone to a great extent. That translations after translations.
Yeah, no offense to their work.
Yeah,
they are
great
amazing.
writers.
They are great writers.
They are the best of the best.
But we need to acknowledge others as well.
Yeah, the writing does not stop in the 1950s and 60s.
Agreed.
Right?
Yes.
There are writers who are continuously writing, as this book tries to show, that what the world has changed. It's not the just post independence India, immediate post independence.
Agreed.
It's almost 75 years after independence, and what does the present writer think about the contemporary state of things?
Which is so necessary, because I'm really sorry to, I don't know, you can contradict my thoughts, but we are slightly on the verge of losing the habit to read. There was a habit, like I remember when I was born or when I was growing up, the parents would insist us to read on a regular basis. That used to be a regular practice. But now in the world of social media, you hardly see any kid reading books or reading novels or this and that. हमारे टाइम पे मिल्स एंड बून्स ही होता होगा मे बी, लेकिन एटलीस्ट पीपल वुड रीड दैट. अब तो वो भी नहीं होता है. That is a sad part.
I think the attention span has fallen so much that
makes sense.
Nobody has the time to sit and read. I think that's why nobody wants to read novels anymore, because you used to read novels once upon a time for entertainment, but now you have Netflix and Prime and things like that. You want to get things done quickly. I think that's why where literature also has to evolve to some extent, right?
But non-fiction bhi nahi chal raha hai. Like people are not even reading non-fiction. Chalo, forget novel, but that is also wrong.
Yeah, so I think it's necessary to get that reading culture back, because reading does allow you. It's not just for the sake of entertainment, right? And that is one of the fundamental reasons why we study literature, because literature is not simply to keep us happy, to keep us entertained. It also allows us to interrogate the human condition, ask questions about what it is to be human.
And it makes you a better person.
It makes you a better person.
It brings a lot of perspective to your knowledge. It opens up a different world to you.
Yeah, it opens different avenues, different vistas that you would never really engage with in your life generally, right? We live such closed, bubbled lives that we don't see what is happening, with your neighbor, what is happening in with the people around you. I think literature gives you that avenue to see what the world is like without actually moving out from your bedroom.
Makes sense.
To see what the other person is seeing and feeling, and what being is for them.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
So for us, the focus was at least that let us see the world through someone else's eyes, and appreciate what they have to see, what they have to say, what they have to show to us.
What is the spectrum of stories we are talking about?
So this collection is a collection of 19 stories by 8 different writers.
Okay.
So there are various kinds of stories. There are stories about love.
Okay.
Almost questioning what is the traditional conception of love.
Okay.
Is love really just about romantic love, or is there something more?
Okay.
Is it more about understanding and feeling the other rather than just from a sexual point of view, right? There's also questions about what is the quest of human life, like where are we living just for the sake of living, or do we want to achieve something? Do we want to do something with our lives? What are our hopes, our desires, our aspirations? I think some stories want to explore that, and there are also other so the collection does engage with multiple kinds of themes, you could say.
Okay.
Right. There will be stories which deal with the social.
Okay.
What it is like to live a social existence with people around, But there are stories.
Give us an example now. मतलब like book में कैसा है?
So you could say there's this one story which is the stopped clock.
Okay.
About this man who wants to leave the city. He's at the train station and he's at the verge of leaving the city, and he gets enamored by this clock that has stopped working. And instead of leaving the city, he actually tries to see what it is, find out the reason why this railway clock has stopped.
Wow.
And in that, endeavor, he sort of meets different people, sees the world differently. So it almost, in the hope to escape the city, he sort of falls in love with the city all over again, right?
Wow.
So
and the plot is based out of Kolkata.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that kind of stories. There are, of course, other stories which are what is called in literature. They're called modernist stories.
Okay.
Which is from this literary movement called modernism.
Okay.
Which starts in Europe in the 1920s, and the catchword for modernism is, you could say, make it new.
Okay.
Right. So there are stories which try to quote unquote make it new, like question the form in which a story is told.
Oh.
Right. So it becomes a question about literature, whether literature is simply about telling a story, or is it something more? Do we just tell a story, or do we try to say interrogate the interiority of the human mind? Is literature, especially what is modernist literature, tries to do that, tries to get into the head of a particular character and not deal with the social world, not deal with surroundings, not deal with people, but see how the flows, the thought flows, through consciousness. Right. So how consciousness works, how thinking works within the human mind. So there are stories that try to give a form to this formlessness of thought.
Okay.
Right. So it also is a question about engaging with literature. What is literature? Why is literature? Why do we read literature? How do we write literature? So those kinds of questions some writers also have tried to engage with.
Kafi deep baat.
So it becomes a little allows us to understand our own selves, right? Where we don't just think that we exist in the social world. There is a world of the interior mind also.
Agreed.
Right? And there are some very interesting stories, for example, which also deal with human relationships.
Okay.
Right. What it is to live with someone, what it is to, worry about someone else. Right. So it becomes a question about how we think of ourselves in perspective to the other.
Okay.
Right. That we are not living in isolation, that our existence, our identities are also formed, whether it's identities of a father, mother, son, whatever it be. These are not identities in isolation, right? These are relative identities.
Agreed.
You're a father because you have a child. That kind of thing.
True.
Right? So what it is to live amongst people, how that affects identities, how that affects our being, how that affects our behaviors with people, and are we different people when we meet different kinds of people? Do we put on masks when we meet a certain kind of people? Don't we?
We do.
Right. We have, professional and personal identities and,
Agreed.
Personalities. So there are some stories also engage with those questions. And, there are some stories which engage with, questions of politics, questions of international. There's a story which deals with, it's almost a spy story, you can say.
Okay.
Where the story becomes, it's a two people meeting who become friends, but their friendship is sort of, tinged with international politics, and the friendship breaks apart because of that. So
they are spies.
Yeah, that
Ek tha tiger.
Sort of, you could say.
Nobody thought of bringing that analogy into.
Yeah, exactly. So it brings up the question that how do we look at ourselves, in relation to the other, and how these categories of nationality, categories of religion, categories of class, caste, how they come into the middle of forming close human relationships, and how they affect every aspect of our lives, right? So in that sense, all of these stories sort of try to engage with every aspect of our human existence.
Makes sense.
As I said, of loving and losing, of violence, of history, of mythology, of relationships. So I think in the book, at least, there is something for somebody.
Man, I would love to read I haven't completed the entire book. I would love to read the entire book. But honestly, after talking to you, I feel like learning Urdu and then reading the originals. Because I always have a love for the original script. Even if it's Tamil, even if it's Bangla or Urdu, I really want to learn and read the original original language. I would love to read that.
I think it's a very important point, just about translations and languages and literatures in this diverse country that we live, obviously, right? Because we are in such closed lives where we only engage with one or two languages at max. It's either and mostly it's Hindi, English, Bangla. We don't even think about other languages. And the thing about languages, the more you learn a language, the more you get a different perspective of the same world, right? So a Hindi speaker will see a world very differently from what a Malayalam speaker or Tamil speaker or even a Bengali speaker, Odia speaker, whatever be the case. They see that same world in a different way.
Agreed.
Some world will be hostile to a particular language which is not hostile to another.
Right.
So I think translations at least try to bridge that gap, that even if you're not as close to a particular language, it shows you a perspective from that language in itself. It tries to bring two worlds closer together.
It's a very difficult job, right?
It's a very difficult job translating.
How was the gig all about? You translated with your dad?
Yeah, my dad was the translator. I was the translations editor, it would be, where I'm checking where everything is okay, where everything is readable, and if there are some fixing here and there that requires to be done with regards to the expression of
change in
meaning.
synonyms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there might be some expression that could be better. Fix those kinds of things, and just generally selecting the stories, copy editing them, and things like that. So, I think the translation, from a very translation perspective, it becomes necessary primarily because we need to sort of understand that apart from, say, academia, nobody is actually engaging in, very few people are actually engaging in acts of translation, right? Translating from one language to the other. And I think that is something that keeps, the distance amongst people keeps growing, because other people are not engaging in these acts of translation, trying to bring two different cultures
India
together.
is actually, I don't know, but India is one of the best countries to actually learn multiple languages.
Yes, of course.
Because we have exposure to n number of languages around us.
Yeah.
If you go to any Western country, you will hardly find one or two languages. 3 languages at the most.
Yeah.
We have exposure to, I don't know,
4-5 languages at least everyone.
मतलब हर आजू बाजू में कम से कम 5-10 लैंग्वेज बोलने वाले तो आजू बाजू लोग मिल जाएंगे.
100%.
So true.
I think it also, at least the book tries to, or it was our endeavor to perhaps also allow other people also to,
Read.
see the world, or even perhaps even themselves try to translate something, right?
It makes sense.
It's not just academics who should be doing it. It's about anyone who is proficient in a particular language can do these kinds of things.
Makes sense.
And it becomes not just bring two worlds closer together, but it's an act of cultural preservation, where any kind of culture that sort of becomes marginalized or is dying out gets preserved in the act of translation.
Man, I really want to learn Urdu. Now I am actually intrigued to learn how to read Urdu, because I believe, like I'm a Bengali, but I don't know how to read Bangla. So I really want to learn that, and now I really want to learn Urdu as well, because I feel that there is a vast spectrum of literature available in Urdu as well as in Bangla and other languages as well.
Also, yeah.
But मुझे लगता है कि ये दो सीखूंगा तो मुझे शायद एक थोड़ा सा better इंसान बन सकूंगा. How to start that?
Maybe you can start. I think there are.
Are there teachers?
No, there are programs you can start. I think there are. From what I remember, Rekta has a.
But they just started, and I guess they ended it. I have no clue about whether they are still doing it or not. They used to do it.
But I think some universities do have certificate courses.
But they won't teach me like basics ABCD.
They will. They will start from the scratch.
Okay.
So I think Is
it a difficult language to learn?
It is sort of.
Okay.
Because it's slightly more complex if you don't have like a cultural, family background regarding it. But I think if if you put your mind to it, I'm sure you can pick up anything very fast.
But it's a very different lippy as well, right? Lippy का खेल थोड़ा अलग है. Devanagari होता तो it would have been easier for me or for anybody. Like French is easier for us because we know how to write in Roman.
But I think picking up the reading will not take so much time.
Okay, at least 2-3 months.
I think you can do basic reading.
Then I guess the love for the language will actually take over and.
Especially because we've grown up, especially you and I.
Yeah,
we've grown up Hindi speaking belt, but also in a Bollywood culture which really loved Urdu and which has sort of died out right now. But lyrics were in the
primarily
70s,
Urdu,
80s, 90s.
Primarily Urdu.
They're all Urdu based, so that sort of expression of a particular feeling that does not necessarily come in a language, say like English. Can be done in languages, in very different languages like Urdu and Hindi.
सब्र सुकून ये सब तो हमने सुन के हम बड़े हुए हैं, तो हमारे लिए कोई मतलब एकदम strange words नहीं है.
So the subtlety and nuance of a particular feeling that doesn't come in something as rigid a language as English will come in these kinds of languages, right?
So well quoted,
to be able to express our own feelings in a better way, I think that is enough to want to learn something.
आज भी आशिकों की पहली जो जुबान होती है वो उर्दू होती है.
Exactly. So
प्यार और टकरार सबसे अच्छा एक्सप्रेस उर्दू में ही किया जाता है. Tell us something more about Kolkata. How is Kolkata as a place? What is the vibe of Kolkata?
So Kolkata, of course, I grew up in Kolkata. I was there in Kolkata till my masters up till 2015.
Okay.
So I have loved the place. I have loved the food. I've loved the culture. I've loved the, the easy, laid-back life. Especially, life here in Delhi is so fast-paced and everything wants to be done immediately. And Calcutta people are much, much more chiller, you can say.
Yeah.
Like afternoon is for nap
time. Yeah.
Nobody wants to work in the everyone shutters down, relax in the afternoon. So I think that kind of life is very necessary also.
Yeah.
In this fast rat race life that we live, I think we somehow forget to enjoy the little moments, enjoy the little pleasures of.
You don't get time for family. You don't get time for yourself. You don't get time for anything here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. At least they enjoy that.
So you could say they are living the life in that.
Yeah. We don't live life in.
we just passing through life while they are living it.
Makes sense.
Right. So I think the book was also an attempt to, allow us to live lives to some extent, right? To take a break, pick up a book, read a story, and relax for some time, and just not think about what to do, not think about your to-do list, and just enjoy what time you have here, right? And whether it's half an hour, 1 hour, whatever, a break from the daily drudgery of modern existence, and just be yourself, right? So I think that attitude of Kolkata is something that should permeate every part of.
Do you also pick like small short stories when you are traveling here and there
from
Kolkata?
Usually, not necessarily from Kolkata, but I make it a point. Like if I'm traveling to work, I read something on the way.
No, not only read. Like I'm talking from the perspective of a writer. Like if you're just traveling here and you mentioned that you were in Nagpur, you just came back from Nagpur. Like on the flight here and there, कभी कभार दिमाग में ऐसा writer चलता है कि यार क्या story होगा? I would love to write about it.
I think but I think I don't feel that I am a writer as such. I think a writer has a. That's why we are translators and editors and not writers, right? Where a writer has a perspective of the world which not everyone has. A writer sees the same thing.
You being modest, I believe, but ठीक है.
No,
there will be a time you'll also write.
Maybe sometime in the future, if I feel that I have something worthy to say to the world.
Okay.
I think a writer is someone who writes primarily because they know they have something to say that will affect people's lives, that people want to articulate but don't have the words for, and that is where the writer comes in.
Agreed.
Right? They say what you want to say. They express what you wanted to express but never have been able to, or put the words to your feelings. Right. So I think in the case of for writers at least, once they see something, once they see an experience, once they see an event, for them writing might become an act of translating feeling into words, right? So there is always an act of translation that is everywhere that is happening, right? Where they're translating an event, a feeling, an emotion into words, and words which have not necessarily a specific effect, right? They have to, literature has to have a universal effect. Even if you're talking about something very specific, whether it's an, you know, relationships, whether you're talking about love, whether you're talking about violence, whether you're talking about history, there is a universality that a writer brings to a particular emotion, right? That any reader can understand. Whether you and me, we have different worlds, but if we read a writer, we can understand, we can feel with the writer what you know, he or she is trying to say. I think that special way of taking a specific experience and universalizing it to a general human experience, I think that is a gift of the writer.
Wow.
Right.
Very well said. Very well said. How was life at JNU? You just completed your
JNU, I have lived in JNU in the most tumultuous time you could say JNU had.
From 2018?
15 to 2023.
Oh,
I've lived through the whole politics.
One of those times.
Yeah.
Anti-national wale jab slogans. So did you feel bad? Like your college, your alma mater have been branded as a college of anti-nationals?
I think the fact that it got caught in politics in that sense, of course, we are all immersed in politics. That to say that JNU is outside politics is, you know, ridiculous thing to say. But I think it got caught in a politics which was very detrimental to its image, right? Where I think everything that was said and done was twisted much more than it should have been, and it affected not just the status of the university but the lives of the students too, right? Where many students during those whole tumultuous times were subject to a lot of physical violence outside in the city also, apart from the mental, psychological, you know, violence and, you know, the effect on people's careers and things like that, right? So it became a tag that nobody wanted to have on them after one point of time, that nobody wanted to identify with a JNU. But I think it's very necessary, a place like JNU, apart from what is, you know, the one-dimensional view in the mass media. I think a place like JNU is a mini India, where there are multiple kinds of people from different parts of the country speaking different languages that live together.
And having different perspectives in politically, in food habits, in language they speak everywhere. And
you can say absolutely politically opposite people sit together in the messes and have lunch and talk politics and, you know, sitting in their rooms and having fun. So the image of JNU outside and the image that we have seen of JNU inside are two different images.
Agree to disagree, actually practice hota hai.
It's 100%. I think it's a place where everyone should have been or attempted to be there once in their lives.
A lot of people attempt to. It's a difficult university to crack into.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a difficult place to go into, but I guess JNU as a university has produced some amazing scholars, some of the finest teachers, some of the finest people who are damn good in the field they are today. Maybe pol science, maybe any literature, maybe social studies, and maybe cultural studies, language studies, but it's a great university. I don't know what's the reality which is propagated in the general public spectrum, but I guess every university or every popular thing witness that moment in their entire journey where they are degraded to, or their image has been degraded to, I don't know how should I put it, but समझ गए आप मतलब कभी न कभी life में
I think everyone should go there once and see how beautiful life is.
How is the life at JNU?
I think it's very relaxed. People are not caught up in any sort of rat race. People get up late in the afternoon and relax and study. But the JNU is also the kind of place which does not believe in, you know, timelines in the sense that we get up in the morning, go to work. People working there from, you know, start working middle of the night and work all day. So there are no specific time schemes and people where you get to be you. If you're a night owl, you're a night owl. If you were to work in the morning, you work in the morning. But everyone in JNU is, they study, they observe the world around them. They're aware about politics, about, you know, social issues. And I think that awareness is very necessary even for the rest of the country. That we are aware of what is happening around us. We're aware of politics. We're aware of, you know, issues of social significance, national significance, international significance. I think JNU is the place where that kind of conversation, any of these conversations continuously keep happening, right? So I think that is something positive that our country can also, the people in our country also generally do, but should engage in those kinds of conversations much more often, right?
Makes sense. So क्या plan है future का? What is next? Any other book?
So
any other work?
we're hoping this book,
do well.
does
उसके
well.
बाद
There will be other works in the time, pipeline,
Okay.
where it will be mostly Urdu.
Okay.
Writers from the Urdu language who have not been translated.
Okay.
Perhaps women writers
Okay.
who are not as as popular, or there's a politics to that also, right? Where it's usually male writers who get precedence over women writers.
Yeah.
So even in this book there is one woman writer, but we want to perhaps maybe have a collection which will be just on women writers from the Urdu language. I think that would also be very interesting to see the world from a different perspective again, right?
Yeah.
So, but that is of course a later project, maybe. It depends on many things.
Any dream project which is like not a short term dream, but like आज से 20 साल 30 साल 40 साल बाद जब रिटायर होऊंगा तो ये करूंगा?
I think maybe, as I think we had the conversation where if I have something to write as a novel, maybe sometime in the future, if I feel that I have a subject or an emotion to talk about that requires representation, that requires expression, I think that would add to my footprint in this world, in that sense, or our footprint, our way of the view of the world. So, but that is of course
makes sense.
A much later project.
Agreed. On that note, I guess the love for stories and love for literature always stays with us. This is a book, Contemporary Urdu Short Stories from Kolkata, edited by Shams Afif Siddiqi and Fuzail Asar Siddiqi. Thank you very much, Fuzail, for talking to us.
Having me.
This is by Niyogi Books. मौका पड़े कोलकाता की स्टोरीज को देखने का, सुनने का एंड पढ़ने का, तो इस किताब से ज़रूर देखें. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to us.